everybody. I'd like you to welcome Jason here from the YouTube channel JaysonHere. Welcome.
Yep. Why, thank you. Yeah. Hi, chat. That's my YouTube channel, and yeah, it's Jason here because it's literally just me, and I'm at a location, and that would be here. So there you go.
Yeah, there you go. So
that's essentially why I chose it. But yeah.
I mean, it makes sense. So you and I share something in common, along with Zena and many people in my chat. You are also trans.
Yep.
And yeah, so I guess like you want to give them an overview of what your content's like?
My content is largely just me kind of creating more short reaction videos. Sometimes I do lives, but my computer doesn't really have enough processing power to kind of maintain most lives, so I don't do those as much. If I do a live, it will be generally just with me either talking to chat but not actually having anything up in the background because OBS lags my computer out too much, or figuring out some way to keep OBS from crashing.
Yeah,
basically
OBS is the devil, in my humble opinion. Yep. It constantly gives me shit. If it's not an audio issue, it's the I've decided to move chat even though we've had it this way for 3 weeks. Yeah. Always a favorite. But yeah, we manage. So yeah, so I think what we had talked about kind of going over today was discussing kind of our impressions and thoughts about trans content creators and sort of the idea of, you know, what content creators do we follow? What do we think are good representations of trans people in the community? What are some less than great ones? And kind of going into some of the stuff that I think you've seen on my channel, and I think you and I have talked about briefly over DMs.
Yeah. So I think we can all here say that ContraPoints is probably a really good example of what we sort of would want to see in a video essayist, obviously, as a trans video essayist. The way that she does her content is extremely informative, and it really tells people what they need to hear in such a concise way. It's fantastic. I think the things that happen around Contra, though, especially on Twitter and the drama there are certain things that could be handled better to sort of fix that. But in general, I think the idea of not really being a trans med, obviously, we don't want that focus put on. We want to make sure that it's a more inclusive space, and we want to make sure that, at least in some way, even though it kind of sucks to be considered a positive representation for the community because you're just like a YouTuber, people will still consider you that way, regardless of whether or not we really want them to in a lot of ways. So it's good to have positive representations for the community out there.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me ask you this, because this might be the center of our conversation for a minute, is what is your take on Contra? Like, based on everything you've seen, everything involving the canceling video and Buck Angel and all that stuff, like what is your take on that?
My take on the Buck Angel thing, honestly, the Buck Angel move was probably not the best. And I think that there's so many tweets out there from Buck that are so clearly transphobic that I don't know how she missed them. However, it does seem like she has some kind of, I don't know, attachment to this idea of Buck that she has in some way. That I don't know what's going on there, but it seems like she has her heart in the right place in a lot of ways. What it seems like based on what we can all see. But having Buck Angel on in itself wasn't harmful, but the fact that he was there kind of sparked a whole discourse that I think the discourse itself in a lot of ways was harmful. So do I think necessarily having Buck Angel read something? Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, like this is
having him read something.
Yeah, go ahead, finish your thought.
Yeah, no problem. Sorry. Having him read something, like, he's not giving his opinion on anything, but still, you do have him in the credits, you do have him there, and people might go and look into him, and that might be harmful to some people.
So this gets hard for me because I'm going to be really clear about the drama to sort of understand it.
Mm-hmm.
I, after watching Canceling, came to a conclusion.
Mm-hmm.
I think I can simultaneously hate Buck's views and also be okay with him doing a John Waters quote. Like, let's be clear. Yeah. John Waters is a giant transphobe.
Oh, yeah.
like, holy
yeah, there's
shit.
No way.
Dude, like, John Waters is awful about trans people. He's not quite up there as bad as, like, the creator of Rocky Horror, but he's that direction. So, like, the thing here is that I think it's simultaneously capable for people to be able to be wary of Buck and his weird trans medicalist true scum views, and also understand that this is a man who has done demonstrable good for the trans community in regards to activism, as far as representation. I mean, to some degree, Buck's worldview was the worldview when I was a kid. In the 90s, when I was growing up, Buck's worldview was that. Now, do I think he should change? Do I think he should treat, non-binary people better as a non-binary femme? Yeah, kinda. Super. That'd be nice. But I also think, let's see what Thanagar put in chat. It's both possible and even necessary to simultaneously enjoy media while also being critical of its more problematic or pernicious elements or aspects. Excuse me. Yeah. Like, my thing on the canceling video is this: I think the trans community has an issue with building up icons, and because of the way we and this is not me trying to sound like a Jordan Peterson, fuck's sakes, but like, because of the way postmodernism has become the regular part of the discourse, there is a way in which old tropes of heroes, pop stars, a lot of people have disappointed us, right? Michael Jackson, the king of pop, only recently got basically like fully cleared of all charges of the things that happened to him. This is a man whose like discography is huge, and he is forever tarnished by these allegations, right? That's not to say if something had happened, people shouldn't come out, but it is kind of fucked up that throughout the whole of time, not just the people who deserved it, the Kevin Spaceys, the R. Kellys, but we do have this tendency as the left to tear down people. I think we don't like icons. I don't think we like leaders in some ways. Now, come back to Contra. My big issue with Contra is that I feel like, as one of the most notable trans women on YouTube, one of the most noticed and one of the most cis-friendly. Like, I can watch her.
No, Michael Jackson wasn't trans, sorry.
I know he wasn't. I'm just using him as an example.
Sorry, somebody in the chat.
MJ was not trans, Rosanna. Calm down. You're like 12. Stop it.
That's what I was saying.
Nice.
I noticed somebody was saying something in chat, and I had to.
No, you're good. You're good. It was using Michael Jackson as an example of controversy and the way that people on the left tend to tear people down. Okay. No, he was not trans, though. Still, fantastic dancer. It is funny that a child has that. Like, I love Rosanna. Be nice to her. But like, I feel like, just like with the Lindsay Ellis thing, I feel like there's a way in which people essentially wait, in some cases, for someone to inevitably fall, to inevitably no longer be there for them, to no longer meet this. I've talked to a number of people like in DMs, and the reoccurring thing I hear from a lot of people that don't like ContraPoints or BreadTube or whatever is that they felt so betrayed. They felt so disappointed. But when I ask them why they feel disappointed, why they feel betrayed, they can't give me any straight answers. I'm disappointed that she had Buck on. Buck's a trans person, and he wasn't touting his views there. He was reading a 10-second John Waters quote. Would you prefer John Waters? Because that's worse. Like, this is why I'm not a big fan of the people that, like, I think we had a conversation at the mod meeting last night. There's this thing that I'll see pseudo allies do where they will validate your identity. Like, they'll be like, Jason, you're a boy. Jess, you're a girl. And then we'll get to like Blair White, and they'll be like, fuck that dude. And you know the allies I'm talking about, the ones where your validity is based entirely on them liking you. And that's fucked. And that's the problem, is even if Contra had done something wrong, in my view, the response from the online left and the response from the people on Twitter are an utter violation of leftist values. I don't know how else to put that.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
No, completely correct. No, that's completely correct. I mean, the left is supposed to believe in this idea of rehabilitation, and yet people go and they say, oh, this is wrong. This was always wrong. I agree with you, to be honest. And it's kind of one of those things where I was like, I didn't know it was Buck Angel until this whole thing blew up. I didn't even notice because the credits, I don't. Sometimes we all do an oops and we do skip the credits. It happens. But I didn't even know. And then this whole thing blew up. And I think the reaction, you're right. I think it was just a bunch of people who were mad at Contra for being Contra, not for not being a good enough advocate, but it was for being who she is, and just they don't like her as a person. And honestly, in a lot of ways, it's one of the bigger problems.
I'll actually go one step further. I don't know if it's that they don't like her. I think it's that I don't want to call it jealousy because it seems so reductive, but it's like there really is this bizarre thing, and I think you've seen it too, but there is this bizarre thing where members on the left, Bosch has talked about this, there's a combination of factors. There's the insularness of certain left communities that separate their discourse out to the point where it becomes groupthink. And then you have the effect of when somebody who is an icon fucks up, and they violated that subculture or that group's mores, or have done something that immediately is reacted to by the most vitriolic members of that group, it turns into this. By the way, for those who don't know who Buck Angel is, I need to show you this meme real quick that Soaked on Left put out. It's real good.
I'm always excited for memes.
Do you know who these people are? Do you?
I know that Buck's on the other side, and I have a feeling that I should know who's on the other. And I'm gonna guess, hold up, is the woman on the right one of the Wachowski sisters?
No, though. That'd be funny as fuck.
I was just trying to guess. I don't know.
So both of these are porn stars. On the left, we have Buck Angel, well-known trans man who basically marketed himself as the man with a pussy, and has done a ton of trans advocacy in the 90s and early 2000s. He also has said some true scummy motherfucking shit and has tried to be a pick-me as far as conservatives. And on top of it, folks, for don't know, he also kind of outed one of the Wachowski sisters as far as her being trans. Now, at the time, he called her a cross-dresser because they didn't know. But yeah. No. The woman on the right is not Blair White. Do you want to know who the woman on the right is? I'm going to let you guys Google this because I'll get demonetized or possibly have the video shut down. I want you to look up a girl named Bailey J. I know about her through research.
I don't know about her through research because my parents have a very strict internet access code. But
that would make sense. Yeah.
Sure.
She's a yeah, I know that girl. That is not a name I have heard in such time, right? Like, but do you see what I mean? Like, this is my point, is like, this is a trans sex worker who I disagree with. Yeah, research. Fuck off, Minerva. And who has done really dumb shit and also has done really good things. And my issue is that we loathe as a fucking group any sort of nuance. Like, I can both simultaneously like Buck Angel's advocacy. I can talk about the fact that he's had there are posters of Buck Angel in the fucking, what are they? Are they stirrups? The things for gynecological exams. Yeah, right. Those fucking things. Like, in one of those, sheet over his like lower half, and like basically telling people, go get, regular like examination stirrups. Thank you. Like, I can't argue with that. What I can argue with is that his work nowadays kind of sucks ass, and I think that we do need to challenge him on that. But
yeah,
my issue is that there are trans people that say some dumb shit. Because and I'm gonna drop the spoiler. Like everybody who's trans knows this already, but we never say it out loud because it's one of those like quiet parts you don't say out loud. But let me be clear. Being trans does not affect any other part of your personality, and you can still be an absolute idiot and an absolute cunt. Let me be very clear. Being trans changes none of that. It might make you a more empathetic if we're lucky and hopeful. I'll give you a perfect example. Yeah. In one of the other servers I run, there was a young lady, young in the sense of probably in her 40s, who was trying to come out as trans, was really scared, wasn't sure what to do, lived in fucking like one of the really bad southern states. And I tried to have the conversation with them about like, hey, you should come out. You should find ways, talk to your HR and your job, all that kind of stuff. And then I was like, you also shouldn't support Trump. And they were real hesitant on that one. Like they were still hardcore Republican, but were trans. One of my former clients, one of their parents was trans, had gone through a full medical transition, and then was hardcore build the wall. The fact is being trans changes nothing about a person's political things. It makes leanings, it makes possibilities, it has sociological effects. But the idea that being trans changes any other part of you, like, no. Buck said some dumb shit. That should be called out. But he's not platforming himself into Contra's video. He's just saying shit. He's doing a quote by a guy who is almost more worse, and to some degree, is also a relic of his time. Do I think the relic thing or the old person thing is a good excuse? No, but I don't understand why we can't hold people in more of a nuanced form. Like Buck says dumb shit and Buck should be called out for it, and Buck is still trans. Like, why does everybody suck at
I absolutely
unity?
agree.
Well, we do kind of have to reckon with our cast being one of the younger generation. No, like a lot of the older trans folks really did grow up in a very like binary world. That was the option, and I know a lot of them struggle with breaking out of that. Right, like that is a thing, and we do have to reckon with that past. Like those are the people that came before us, and we can be in the place we're at now. And I'm not saying like excuse problematic stuff when it's happening, but I do think we need a level of understanding about what was going on before.
Yes, we're owning people as illegal. No one is disagreeing. Let's be very clear.
Yeah,
they are both afraid of change and also awful. You were gonna say?
Jess, can you turn your video on so I can see?
Oh yeah.
Or is that not possible?
Oh,
no, that's totally possible. I just gotta get it to set up because it's labs. Everything might be backwards. Just give you a heads up. 1 second.
If it's,
it is not too
if
hard.
It's tough, don't worry about it.
It's not too hard. It's just silly. Virtual cam. Start virtual webcam. Done. Now you can see us there.
Yes.
I'll put you.
Sorry, visual cues are mega helpful.
Sure. So
in conversation.
So yeah, so I'm glad we're of the same mind on Contra because I do feel like I have seen on Twitter some really stupid fucking takes, and now this kind of gets into the bigger thing. Unless there's more you have on Contra, we can get into some other content creators.
I don't know. We can go broad.
Let's go broad. So let's do some compare and contrast, right? Let's do like this big mind meta analysis stuff.
Big brain time.
Big brain time. It's big brain time. So how do we as trans creators deal with other trans creators? And I don't necessarily mean Contra. Contra is not at our level. We're babies. Like we're tiny YouTube channels that talk about stuff, and we have our fans, we have our servers, but we are not her. And so to some degree, I don't even know if necessarily talking about her is necessarily relevant in the sense that we can talk about our feelings of it as people that are fans of hers and things like that. But let's look at some other individuals, like including the people that came after Contra. There is, if you want to go over the list, we could talk about people such as, the far right folks, such as Rose of Dawn and Blair White. We could talk about, just for shits and giggles, what was that lady's name? Lily Orchard. We also could talk about Essence of Thought, or Levy?
I am not as close. I am not as caught up on the Essence of Thought thing as I am on the person who I would, politely describe as a human being. I'm pretty sure, named Lily Orchard. I don't want to go that far.
I don't want to go that far with it. I don't want to go that far with it. Lily's a human being. Lily's a loving person that has partners and people that care about them.
Oh yeah, no.
They've also done some shit.
I agree.
There's something I know too much about some of this, so I'm just going to shut up about that. What I will say is that I don't want to dehumanize anyone, and there are things that Lily has done that I respect. She's also a really good example of the question. Where and when is the line of we've gone too far, or when is it that your behavior is no longer provocative but now is actually transgressive to the point where it might be doing demonstrable harm?
Oh yeah, she's a fantastic example of what not to do in terms of call outs, because whenever she tries to do a call out, it is always, and I think you've said this before, it is always, this person is unforgivable, this is too much, like any small thing that happens is too much, we never consider what they've done in the past. And I agree with you, we can look at Buck did in years prior, that was fantastic trans advocacy, but we can also look at what he's doing now, and we can say, that's not good. Humans are complicated, and we can look at more than just what you can see on the surface level, obviously. And I'm sure you know that more than anybody, but just, I think she's a good example of only going after what is wrong and never going after the people who think because somebody has done a perceived wrong, it is then okay to go and torment someone. Honestly, if you thought Contra had something wrong with that situation and you were Lily Orchard, you can make a criticism. That's fair. There are fair ways to critique other people, but actual helpful critique that builds somebody up is way different than going and saying blank was bad and not explaining. Because if you just say this was bad and you don't say why it was bad, necessarily you put it into the hands of your audience to decide, well, why was it bad? And if you do that, then it's too far removed. I think,
absolutely. No, and so here's the problem is that like this comes back to the nuance argument. One of the things that I think is really important is to differentiate media versus people criticism. So like I tend to be a minority in my server, which is I like the Steven Universe video. I know a lot of people give it shit, but there are some themes in there that bother me. Just like with Legend of Korra, there are some things that fucking bother me in that show, including the constantly beating the shit out of Korra and her powers not working as well as a man's. I don't think those are bad. What I think is bad, though, is that when it goes into sort of critiquing people, the same large swath generalizations that are made about shows get then targeted at other people. And I would actually say to kind of like, sort of back out a little bit and look at this in a bigger picture. I don't think this is just a Lily problem. I see this with a lot of trans YouTubers. There is a tendency with certain circumstances to sort of do this thing where there is very real and aggressive intent in their content to be, I don't think in any way constructive. They may give the appearance of constructiveness, or they may want to talk about things. Although, let's be clear, Lily doesn't do that. Lily's is just clearly attacks. But essence of thoughts things are given with the idea that they're supposed to be helpful to better understand a situation, but they do come off as, in some ways, just as vitriolic or just as bad in regards to looking at a person's argument and situation in the worst possible faith without any charitability. And you can see this in a lot of people. the same uncharitability that Blair White and Rose of Dawn give the rest of the trans community, which is none, is the same amount Lily Orchard, essence of thought against anyone that they don't like. And those folks like that, where let's just use the colloquial term, even though I'm not a big fan of it. One of the problems is some content creators are in fact woke scolds. They are individuals who actively, it almost seems like, are nursing a desire to have power over these people. Like in some ways they want to aggressively attack them and do so in the most negative ways possible with no consideration of this person's feelings or well-being or their intentions over what they said. And I think that needs to be looked at here because in some ways, there's a number of people that I kind of look at as the same. Lily lied in her video about Natalie Wynn. Her video was incredibly uncharitable, incredibly false. Fuck, watch Vosh's video of watching Lily. This is back in his spicier days, but he tears that shit apart because it's terrible. Now, compare that to Blair White lying about Janae Kroc, the weightlifter lady. For those who don't know,
there's a different level there, I think.
I don't know. I actually think they're about equal. Both of them are doing demonstrable harm to trans women. Think about it. Janae Kroc was lied about and said that she had competed against women, even though all of her titles are against men. She is a professional weightlifter and has only ever performed against men, never performed against women, which, seriously, Blair White lied about. In fact, joke going, do you know who pointed out that she, yeah, sorry, I almost misspoke, Anthers. But if you want to see something really great, D'Angelo Wallace brings this up twice. He actually points out, not only did Blair lie about Janae Kroc, but she also lied about the J.K. Rowling book thing. Troubled Blood, the big transphobic book. The reason why,
oh God, I remember that.
The reason why Lindsay Ellis could bring it up in her video about that shit was because D'Angelo Wallace is the one that caught that she lied about having the physical copy versus the digital copy in two separate videos. So let's get this straight. So Janae Kroc never has competed against women. She's not even part of the trans women in sports discourse. And she does good works. She's a really cool person online. And Blair White lies about her and does some really just terrible shit in her video. Let's be super clear. Janae Kroc is a non-passing trans woman who is incredibly sweet and tries to do good work for the community. How is Natalie different? Natalie has converted all writers. Natalie has brought up the fucked up ways in which performativity theory doesn't work. In none of Lily's none of Natalie's videos is anything that looks like transmedicalism. In fact, the one video that everyone cites, which is the aesthetic, Luxander has an entire video going through deconstructing, saying she's talking about performative theory, and also she's saying the quiet part out loud that non-binary people can't pass, and that's fucked up. This is so weird to me because they're on different sides of the political aisle, we give them a pass in a certain way, but I don't really see them as different. Blair White lying about Janae Kroc is no different than Lily Orchard lying about Natalie Wynn. It's in Blair White's case, the only difference is it's punching down. In Lily Orchard's, it's punching up because Contra's bigger than her. But again, I think this blind, always punching up is good is really lacking in intellectual honesty and nuance. Just saying. So
no,
what are your thoughts
I agree
on
with
that?
you. Actually, that's a good point. No, I completely agree when you say it like that. I think that there's a difference between punching up and punching up when you have brass knuckles on. In a lot of ways, I think the lack of charitability comes to a point where you no longer really care about the person there, but you care about winning. And we all know, we've all seen Twitter. I mean, horrible idea if you have, but
don't go there, it's a hellscape.
That there are a lot of people on there who automatically just assume what they've heard, the first thing that they hear is correct. And then they think it gives them license to go and say whatever they can that hurts the person who supposedly did it wrong. And I think that lack of charitability only promotes that kind of idea. But in general, I would say that the best way to actually critique somebody is to we all learned it in first grade. They were like, okay, now you have to give your Oreo criticism. You put some bad in there and some good in there with what you appreciated to show that you actually did view as well as you could and try to see the positive and the negative.
You mind if I try
simply attacking a person or a person's
real quick,
work.
I got something on this though. I want to say something real quick. Let me black pill you on this because thanks, Liz.
Oh, please do.
Let me black pill you on this because I think you're being incredibly charitable to these people. I'll be honest. Do you remember the analogy I made earlier about people who will use your pronouns and say your name if they like you and like your content, but if they they dislike someone else, like say Blair, they'll act transphobic and shitty? I don't see much of a difference between those people and the people that lashed out on Twitter to someone like Natalie Wynn. I don't actually see any demonstrable difference in that because both of them lead to harassment, harm, and damage. And what they do is all of a sudden, Natalie's place as a leftist or a liberal, as well as the realities of the good she's done, are suddenly erased and she's made to be a villain. I'll give an analogous example. There were people on Twitter literally posting that Lindsay Ellis was a goddamn racist over her making a structural criticism about Raya the Last Dragon and Avatar the Last Airbender, a joke that Honest Trailers made days before. The thing here is that, like, that's really dumb, but there were people waiting to jump on this discourse, to jump on this and do it. And then all the videos come out and you see content creators like fucking Brennan posting, oh, Lindsay Ellis is fucking gaslighting their community. I believe he's deleted that sense, but it's a real bad take. My concern with all this is that what happens is we suddenly lose all the nuance. We erase all the good the person's ever done for what looks to be essentially a fallacious claim. Like, Lindsay Ellis has put out 4 separate videos about Disney wokeness and about race and about the way that thing's being handled in the modern day era. And all of a sudden there's like, that's gone. You're good. Like, I'll give you another analysis example. How many fucking YouTube debates have you watched Vosh have with transphobes?
I think I've seen all of them at this point.
So let's be really clear.
Honestly, they're fun to listen to.
They are. It's fun. It's nice to see like a fucking pansexual big fluffy guy basically beat the shit out of people that want to hurt me. Let's be super clear.
That chair debate. Oh my god.
Oh god. Fuck. What's that dude's name? T-Jump? Oh, he's so fucking irritating. Anyway.
T-Jump? Okay. Yeah, no.
We'll come back to him. But my point with this with Vosh is there are still idiots out there that believe Vosh is transphobic, but they only know this based on the reputation shared by other people or by one rant against Thought Slime's audience who were basically harassing him. And when they said, you need to listen to trans people, and then the trans people in his community says he got triggered and flipped out. Was it right to do that? No, I'm not a big fan of people lashing out like that. But do I think that, like, in any way, shape, or form, like, he's a transphobe? This is my point. Like, these things stick around. It just fucks with me, and I don't know why, but it's like, in a lot of ways, we don't look at a person's total videography or their entire piece of work or their entire efforts as a human being. We look at the last thing they did and then follow the trend. And one of the reasons why I think the Lily Orchard video was one of the worst ones is because right in the middle of canceling, Lily Orchard put out that video, which was nothing short of a hit piece against Natalie Wynn. If she wanted, and this is where I'll call out her intentions, my inductive argument would be that Lily Orchard had zero interest in actually modifying her behavior. In fact, if you go through her Tumblr, though I guarantee she deleted them, she literally was saying physical threats against Natalie Wynn, telling people that she should get punched, she should get kicked. None of it was particularly egregious, but it was all still statements of physical harm against a trans woman. And the fact is, nothing in her video was actually about how to improve rhetoric or how to improve the situation. It was still just an attack. This is the black pill. These people have zero interest in making these people better because they don't give a fuck about them. They're sacrificial lambs they want to tear down and leave there so they can use their fall, whatever their phoenix fucking fire is on the situation, to be able to gain views and to be able to lash at someone they're either bothered by, jealous of, or have some particular minor beef with that they've turned into an entire career.
Yeah.
Like, let's be really super clear. The Natalie video is the only video really on trans stuff on Lily's channel. There is no other videos on that channel, to my knowledge, that talk specifically about other trans YouTubers or other trans people that are online, other than people that obviously Lily knows and supports. Let's be super kind of clear.
Yeah.
No, it was really just because she wanted to hate on someone and it was opportunistic. Do you have anything you want to add to that, Love?
At some point we'll wrap back to things actually.
Yeah, you were talking about earlier you wanted to go back to the Oreo thing. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was going to give a bit more of an explanation if that's all right.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the Oreo method is a good teaching, all right? Basically, you are adding in positive criticism. Now, I don't want to say positive and negative. It's not quite right either, but like something that the person is doing good that you like at the start, and then you're also ending with that. And so then maybe more of the stuff that they need to work on is in the center. All right, this is really, I learned this actually when I was doing my archery instructor training. And it's also really useful for like writing, art, especially those people who are trying to like reach out and be like, what does this actually do? Because they need both. The hey, these are the things that you're excelling at. These are the things that you're doing great. They're like, I see these things, right? And they do need the constructive parts of, hey, these are the things that I think you could improve on, that I think you could work on. Both of those, because me as the writer, you know, being myself as an example, being the author, I can't always see what's working for my audience and what isn't, right? I don't always know those things. And as far as a video, you know, content creator thing, I think probably one of the most powerful things to do is make sure that we're using that. We are talking about the positive. The other thing that I do when I work with is to praise the good behavior, okay? And it works really, really great because then you kind of get a good culture going. You get your audience starts to mirror that. So if you're like, no, we try really hard to like compliment people or like identify emotions when we're talking, right? I usually work with a lot of younger kids, right? Elementary school and younger youth, sometimes middle school, depending on what job I've had. But those are really good things that we want to encourage. And I think in a community like ours, especially the Asian community, the more that we can be example of behavior, the better. I think there's a lot of people watching that do not have always had good examples of how to foster like positive, you know, positive relationships. Not everybody grows up with that. I didn't. I learned positive relationship stuff from Jess. And so I think the more that we can point out, hey, I really like that this person does X, Y, Z. I like how this person does this. I think those are probably the things forward. And they're the things that we like that craft our narrative, right? A lot of cases and trans issues had handed down other narratives to us, and a lot of them don't make sense, right? Very binary worldview. What is our narrative? You know, if we can find a positive way to look at those, are good ways to kind of share about that stuff. One of the most powerful things.
Yeah. Did you have anything you wanted to add to that, Jason?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, first of all, I absolutely agree. And I think a good comparison that could be made to sort of the people who are conditionally good about pronouns for people based on whether or not they like you, it kind of reminds me of tankies in a certain way, which is that they're kind of taking the aesthetic of being sort of more like progressive, but only when it's really convenient for them. If you using transphobia as a way to punch at somebody, even if you don't like them, is a complete betrayal of a lot of things. And transphobia shouldn't be something that is okay to use because somebody doesn't like the person. And honestly say, yeah, I kind of agree with you there on the point you made about Lily Orchard, and honestly, thank you for blackpilling me in a way.
Yeah. I think there's a tendency
there,
for us to immediately assume that these people are coming in good faith, and I'm going to be really clear. Like,
mm-hmm.
as I said in my Lily Orchard video, like kind of tearing apart her nonsense on Tumblr. Sorry, love. The fact of the matter is I have zero interest to be in any way not on my defense. I'm willing to take things at good faith if they appear to be so, but like, no, both Essence of Thought and Lily Orchard put out a shit ton of videos about ContraPoints right during canceling, neither of which video were aimed at in any way being supportive to another trans person. Instead, they were about attacking that person and fucking working the algorithm. If I had known, for example, that like Lily was in the middle of a fucking like breakdown or a breakup or some shit had happened with her channel, I wouldn't have released my rant. I wouldn't have gone on that, because the fact of the matter is I don't want to add to that, even if my points are entirely true. I think there's a thing that I mentioned before with the Lindsay Ellis stuff too, is that I am very much not okay with the idea of even trying to give constructive criticism in a mob.
The larger conversation around this from a analyzing triggers, and not that we say using them afterwards, but recognizing that triggers and trauma can happen to action.
Yeah.
I can't hear you, Zena.
We can't hear you as much, but I can hear you kind of.
Some of the larger conversation that Justin and I have had around this is normalizing triggers, or that people get that people get triggered is probably the nuanced way to say that. And that when people are in there, they're not always necessarily like thinking clearly or making the best decisions. And recognizing that that's a state of being that people can be in. And so not that we advocate, for like just washing away whatever people said. No, if like a trigger comes up, you got to figure out some, the appropriate way to respond afterwards, right? After that large reaction has happened, right? Sometimes that's, in personal relationships, that might be letting it go, or it could be, hey, I've got to actually talk this out with people now, right?
Yeah.
But that is kind of some of the larger stuff I think that Jess and I have talked about with these topics, is that like that with Lindsay Ellis, like that was a very, very much emotionally charged video, right? Like, God, I know when I have stuff coming up, like if somebody's trying to get at me with criticism, like, no, it's probably not going to make it through any of that. You're, so I think that comes in like the skillful way of how we doing things, right?
Yeah, again, the snowflake doesn't care. That doesn't have to worry itself about the avalanche. Like, it just doesn't.
Yeah.
The thing is that it doesn't matter how, like, this is the thing I actually challenged Lily on Twitter before she blocked me, which was, hey, maybe not say shitty things about Lindsay Ellis, someone who's demonstrably on the left, when all of this discourse is happening and it literally has nothing to do with you. Just throwing out pot shots because they'll get likes on Twitter seems like a weird thing. And the thing is, people think, well, that's not a big deal, except for the way the Twitter algorithm is specifically built is to create engagement. So if I look up Lindsay Ellis and that one's gotten a significant amount of links, it's going to show up somewhere, even if it's not hashtagged. And so the whole point I'm trying to make here is that,
way, right?
Yeah, it's just, I think we have to figure out better language to decide how we want to interact as trans people with other content creators, and decide, like, how do we hold someone accountable while simultaneously not throwing them under the bus? Like, let's be clear. Blair White is absolutely a pick-me, absolutely a token. Do I hate those things? Yeah. Does that mean that her transness isn't real, or that in some ways I'm going to attack her as a person? Not really. I can make guesses inductively as to what's going on in her head, but I don't really feel the need to tear her down in a meaningful way. In fact, all my videos have been structured around the notion of, like Blair, why are you backing the super straights? Like, do you not think you're a woman? This is getting a little weird. What's up? You need a hug? Like,
Yeah. Honestly, Blair makes me genuinely sad in a lot of ways, because it cannot feel good to be where she is. And just the way that she set herself up cannot feel good. But I absolutely agree. And I think you brought up something good that was about Brennan releasing a super fast critique, and the fact that Lily Orchard released that video specifically, we know it was for, at least in some part, algorithm reasons, because it would get clicks. And maybe it's one of those things where if we have criticism, it's best, if we want to put them out as a sort of public thing, to wait until somebody's not being persecuted by a mob on Twitter. Maybe it's best to hold off and to explain that, and to mix in the good with the bad, obviously. But there are ways in which critique, when it's done so quickly, can just be incorrect because the full story hasn't come out and not everything has been heard. That also would probably be better if people waited longer before releasing sort of public critique. So
no, and I agree.
I think
the thing is, we have to choose in some ways this thing where it's like, are we here because we're just trying to get clicks, or are we trying to make the world a better place? Like ostensively, the goals of channels like ContraPoints, Essence of Thoughts, Lily Orchards, all of us are trying to get ideas out there, or trying to make things make sense. My concern is that even if I don't like some of those channels, I'm assuming they're trying to do good for the world. And the question always comes down to it is, are you doing this for clicks, or are you doing this because you think this will genuinely be good for your audience? I am very skeptical of this notion of chasing the algorithm to such a degree that you have to keep making more and more aggressive content against that person. It's why I haven't done another Lily video. It's one of the reasons why you'll notice in ContraPoints video, like, despite the fact that, like, Contra's made some side comments about Blair, has never gone directly after Blair, has never done a video on Blair. She doesn't even do videos that are call-outs.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so
I will say that Calvin comment in one of her videos, I don't know if you saw when she was like, Calvin is too cute, smash him 9,000. That made me laugh. I thought it gets that whole thing is frustrating. That comment is good. Yeah.
My issue with the Calvin thing is that, and maybe this gets into some other people that we might like or no. Let's move into them.
Mm-hmm.
Don't want to run out the Lily discourse. So I think you and I have talked briefly about this, but did you see the RGR Demon Mama debate about what is a woman?
Yes.
What was your take?
My take was that I think the entire situation was really not great. Obviously, as we all know, from an emotional standpoint, but clearly Demon Mama did not super want to be there when it got to a point, and she kept trying to leave. And I think that in that case, RGR just kept pressing on topic that both of them kind of clearly anticipated the other wouldn't agree on, and then eventually they didn't agree. And in a way, I think the entire thing was handled exceedingly poorly, and the way that, especially after seeing sort of Demon Mama's breakdown of the whole thing, the way that RGR kind of handled it afterwards, I found exceedingly dishonest in certain ways. I still appreciate a lot of the good that RGR has done. There are some fantastic bits that she's done, and certain things that she's done with compiling like different research topics for trans people, and the good that she does just in her city advising a lot of different policy decisions. However, that was a terrible way to handle that kind of situation between a friend.
Yeah, I'm of a somewhat similar mind. I think my take on that situation was that I thought it was a really good opportunity to talk about it in the context of mental health, because I think it was a really good example of how communication can break down and how triggers work. If I want to get into the actual discourse of the people involved, this is going to be a hard one. My inductive argument is that based on my observations during RGR's streams and some of the things that she does, I feel like there's a huge weight of attachment she has to her arguments. And there is sort of a way in which those arguments really do represent the majority of her content. And so going into a stream where both of them are at like 7 and 8 hours, already tired and exhausted, you know, having a joke conversation about furry rights, and then going into a discussion about what is a woman, and coming from utterly different views that I'll add are both accurate. RGR is speaking from a legal perspective. She's talking about this. She's talking about subjective and objective in legal terms, right? Gender expression versus gender identity. And it's inclusive to non-binary people. She's trying to create legal definitions because that will create safer laws for people like us. Because as I've told people before, one of the reasons why I consider non-binary people transgender is because I don't want language in laws being used as a way to separate them out, because conservatives are just big enough of dicks to do it. I get that idea. But Demon Mama comes from the identities thing. She's supportive of plural people. She's supportive of a lot of different non-binary identities. She's supportive of just simply, if you identify as a woman, you're a woman. These are not incompatible, but they're there for different reasons. And the problem with that debate is that something switched about 20 minutes in, where all of a sudden it had this feeling like RGR was really upset and would not back down until essentially Demon Mama submitted. So much so, keeping her on a call. And I can imagine, I don't think Demon Mama said as much, but I can imagine, it's going to be a rough one, I can imagine in her mind, because their communities were so interspersed and so absolutely overwhelming, they were completely, like, their discords were connected. They were two communities that were basically fused in some ways. I can imagine Demon Mama didn't want to just drop off the call because there was no way to know what kind of irreparable harm would be done to the community. I don't think she had a good out. I do think towards the end she started getting incredibly passive aggressive, would be the word, in some of the ways she debates. I think she got really frustrated, and I don't blame her on that. I do think that's my projection or my understanding. I don't know if that's entirely true, but that's what my experience was.
Yeah.
So the debate itself to me feels like we're circling around a thing, but we're not talking about it the same way. My concern as far as content creators is the stuff that happened afterwards.
Yep.
I have spoken to some of the people that were in the back behind the scenes of that. In fact, one of them's in my community. And a lot of people told RGR not to release that video. A lot of people were saying, don't do this, just let it go. The video still got released. Not only did the video get released, but then Destiny used that as an opportunity. And yes, I'm going to invoke the dreaded D word, God forbid. Destiny took that as an advantage to come hate on Demon Mama. And then proceeded to give, I would say, in a vacuum, good debate critique to RGR, but under the context of hating Demon Mama, a woman he has said is basically, no uncertain terms, a bad trans. Now, I can talk about in a later video sometime that I think Destiny's an abusive prick. I don't think he's good for anybody, to be perfectly honest. But
oh no, I agree.
I think Vosh's tolerance of over the last several year, like last year or so, has been mostly out of Vosh's parasocial interactions with him in the past and trying to have some level of good faith. I think, I don't want to get DGG up in our arms, but I have very negative views on Destiny. In fact, one of the major members of my community, Hanging Wednesday, and the person I work for, basically said something to the effect of, "Hey, Jess, I have a question." Okay, what's that? Why does anyone listen to Destiny? Hanging Wednesday, I don't know. I do not know. But
I don't either.
But my point with this is that this is where this gets to be scary for me. On the channel before, I've talked about the idea of authoritarianism as far as the political idea. And there's also such a thing as sort of authoritarianism in an energy, in the sense of a way a person behaves, the way they are when they're triggered, the way they aggress. You can call this the fight part of fight, flight, or freeze. But essentially, a lot of people will do this thing where they try to enforce or create control. My issue with the RGR DM debate is it sort of mask-off showed that, like, RGR really does, because of her attachments to her arguments and the need to validate them despite someone just disagreeing from and coming from a different philosophical angle, she booted mods, real friends who left. DM talks about this, and I've heard more about this. The fact is that this was devastating. Separating and pulling apart communities, people were, like, literally not sure what to do. And if anybody spoke out, they were banned. Not just that stream, but that, like, later. And then on top of it, from my understanding, and this is again hearsay, but the understanding of it is that there was literally a point where RGR's fucking Discord status was, I will be the one to decide about putting out the video and about which people to ban. Like, this was an absolutely top-down power move coming from emotional triggers. And I'll just call it what it is. This is not a psychoanalysis. This is just an inductive argument based on what I'm observing. And the thing is that I don't even fault her for that. I think all of us have a tendency that we can go towards that in the right circumstances. My concern is, though, is that this wasn't an urge that she really restrained, and then letting Destiny in, who then came in and said the T-slur and a bunch of other shit, said awful things about Demon Mama, a trans woman who has again said he doesn't, again, who he invalidates the transness of. I guess what my point with all this is really simply is, what do you do with that? Because in my mind, this not only showed that RGR as a content creator is really interested in maintaining power and control in a way that I feel uncomfortable with, but this is not the first time she's done really strange shit. Like, and again, she's a trans woman. I'll support her. I support her content. It's supporting us. It's doing legal work. Let me be clear. My critiques are never against her as a person, but as a content creator and someone who's speaking for us, letting Destiny on to say those things that she did, followed by the absolute hellscape that their community must have been, followed by the way in which this really not just impacted their communities, but also the communities of a lot of other people. I have a feeling, like, let's go down the list. RGR also decided to try to forgive Calvin Gara from his very real, like, stochastic terrorist attacks of harassment against people like Brendan Beckwith. RGR also, let's be super clear, also decided to go on a screed on Twitter talking shit about other leftists and saying that she hated socialism. Now, I get that she was triggered. I get that she was upset. I get that she was bothered because she doesn't like the eat the rich meme. Cool. Fair enough. Don't use it. It's cool. And I'm not justifying the harassment against her. But I guess what I'm trying to paint as a picture is it's the same thing. Top down, push people away, immediately establish safety, which is fine in certain contexts. But as a content creator, there have now been multiple occasions where she's sort of unilaterally made a decision that affects the rest of, like, her community, the trans people. And I don't know how I feel about that. I don't think you can just say Calvin Gara's forgiven, that this is a redemption arc when he never agreed to a single point and was drunk during the conversation. What the fuck? Xander Hall in that conversation literally said truthful, factual things. And don't get me wrong, I'm not, like, the best about Xander. I don't watch a lot of his stuff. I rather watch Fosh. But, like, let's be clear. He said absolutely correct and factual things. And because he was cis, Calvin shut him down. He literally pulled InPol out as a way to shut down truthful statements about non-binary people. Like, the fact that that was considered a redemption is insane. Real quick, Anthers, stochastic terrorism is a belief that basically through emotional manipulation and parasocial relationships, you can nudge people to action. You never come out and say, go attack fill-in minority group here. But if you keep saying, you know, they're just trying to replace us and eventually they're going to do so, and then we gotta act out, we gotta stop them. And then someone goes on a screed running around shooting a bunch of people that are brown. You can't say Sargon of Akkad or whatnot did that, but they do that. They are radicalizing people to do these things, even if they never come out and say it. So just wanted to answer that. But what are your thoughts on all this, Jason? I know I painted a big, broad picture, but I am genuinely curious on your views.
No, absolutely. And I think in some ways, there should be a certain point where I'm too personally invested in this, or somebody is too personally invested in something to really give good faith critique on it, I think. And with the RGR thing, I think what happened was, I understand being super defensive of a lot of different arguments for validating your identity as trans. I personally had to my own parents. I was a true scum because I had to be, like, years ago, and then, you know, it sort of for the last, I think, 3 years I haven't been, and I thankfully did not have any platform when I was true scum. But I understand an emotional attachment. So I feel for RGR's like emotional attachment to her arguments in a way. But I don't think that there can be an excuse for really what she did. I think there can be an explanation in a way, but I think an excuse at this point is a bit tough to give. I do look at what RGR did significantly more unfavorably than I do what Demon Mama did in that situation. I think. But I think there sometimes need to be a point where we go, there is not a way for somebody to interact with this because it hurts them, like, personally to this extent.
No, absolutely.
There's not a way for them to interact positively or constructively. Yeah.
Zena, what are your thoughts on this?
I think I would say that...
Oh, go ahead and finish your thought. Go ahead and finish your thought, and then, yeah, I was going to give Zena a chance to talk a little bit.
Oh, yeah, no, my thoughts aren't wholly different. Those debates were real rough to watch. Especially the Destiny afterwards. That whole time, like... So, things that I notice with people, and I've noticed a lot of abusive people and things that I would call abusive, just that, like, swooping in afterwards, after a fight has happened, is a real great way to manipulate things after. Or to manipulate the situation further.
Love bombing, yeah.
I mean, basically, it's what it is. And I would actually just to add just a quick thought is, not only is it coming in there, I would actually make it analogous to the person who's like the guy on the outside of a relationship and is like, yeah, he's no good for you. Like,
no. Let me be real here. I have definitely had friends that will get in weird ways. This is more of a case in high school too. When I had this stuff happening. But yeah, no, I've definitely seen friends that will just kind of cut in there and just make the entire situation worse, muddle everything beyond repair, some of my personal examples, and just make it awful. And again, that difference of, like, I know these are debate tips, but that wasn't, like, the context was different, right? Like, I know it was stealthily put in there as these are tips, but that's not what these two creators had, at least what I see on the outside, right? You know, necessarily had going. When you take into account how much, like, their communities were intertwined. Like, that's not the same as, like, this other random dude from several, you know, states and communities away, you know, somewhere else way on the internet coming in to have a discussion. Like, that's not the same thing. I do think, I would hope on the healthy end of things that we can kind of look at people as, okay, this is a trigger, or there's a way to clean this up afterwards, right? I do hope that there is a way that we can kind of foster some of that stuff. But again, that always takes the individual, right? The individual person needs to be able to kind of come out of those places and come to that. You know, that is kind of what that hinges on. And if people are triggered, like, I'm happy to let that stuff go. If it's like a one-time thing, if you've owned it, if you're working on it, that's stuff that I'm happy to let go. Like it doesn't matter anymore to me if somebody is actively working to change that. But I think, yeah, that's what I got. This stuff is really hard. Like those are really rough conversations to see happen. There was a lot of like, oh geez, and coming off of like 6-7 hours already, like no one's great when they're that tired. No one is.
I get fucking tanked after like 3 or 4, and
like just after a work day, just wants to go to sleep. That's
literally my work day. That's my
work
day length through therapy.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, no, I will literally just tell people around me, I am too socially tired right now to interact with you and ignore any small thing. So I need to go be alone because I love you and I care about you, and I cannot be around people right now because I have no filter.
Yeah.
Fucking
it's
true.
Gone.
Yeah.
Fucking true.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I feel like the thing here is that I guess we're obviously not going to come to like a conclusion on any of this. I think the only thing is to say is that I think we need to find a balance between, like, I support RGR as a trans woman who's actively working to legislate things to be better in the United States for people like us. I absolutely support her in that, and I thank her for it. And honestly, her research docs are fantastic.
Oh yeah, they're great.
Yeah, I have a couple of them saved just because I think they're good to crib off of. Don't get me wrong. Good. I think the thing is that I also think it's okay for us to criticize this stuff and to speak about it. And especially now when it's past the point. It might seem like we're dredging up old shit, but I almost feel better dredging up old shit than trying to do this while the stuff's fresh, because doing it while fresh comes back to what we were talking about before. We're adding to the mob. I mean, and just to be very, very clear, there are certain channels on the Discord, folks, that are okay to talk about Destiny, but large-scale Destiny conversation, in case we get a swarm of DGGers, just isn't going to happen. If I start seeing a lot of like spamming and nonsense, I will just ban people. Not because I'm trying to be a bitch, but because I have my views on this, and I don't know, beyond people just it be in the content creator support group channel discussing their hurt and their fears and they're upset about that kind of stuff. I don't know what kind of validity it has. There might be some, but yeah, I am very wary of poking that bear. So
yeah,
but yeah, I mean, is there anything else?
Yeah,
is there anything else?
About the bear in the kayak?
Oh, that fucking video!
Sorry,
stop it, bear!
Bear, don't eat my kayak.
If anyone can go find it, it's like Markiplier trying not to laugh like 20 or 21 or something, where it's like this clearly like basic bitch white girl who's kayaking in the middle of like this beautiful area, and like this like I think it's a brown bear, and it's like it's just like walking towards her, and so she sprays it with mace, and it's not even like being aggressive, it's just moseying, and then like it walks back towards the water towards her kayak, and then just starts breaking the kayak, and is like just like, well, fuck this thing, I hate this thing now, like just spray me with mace, I'll fucking break your kayak. And then
it was a
the whole time she's just yelling in the most basic white bitch voice possible, stop it, bear, that's not food, bear, stop it.
I mean, I have to imagine she was at least pretty dehydrated or something, because it was really high pitched. Just, bear, don't do it. Like,
but yeah, I know we got
sorry.
No, you're good. It's a good tangent. We needed that palate cleanser.
Yeah.
I think maybe this is something you and I are gonna have to talk about more and more, is just how do we do this? Like, how do we find that balance between like, I really like this person's work, or I want to support this person as a trans person, but some of the things they do are odious and concerning.
Yeah.
One of the things I want to invite you to, if you are interested, is in late July, or probably not early October is going to be the best time for, or not October, August. I'm bad with dates. Early August. I am going to be trying to put together a panel of other content creators. We've already got a few people that are signed on. I'm actually hoping to get on, who the fucking is in our Discord? One second. Can't remember who the fuck's who. Yeah, there's a couple other content creators that are in here that I feel like, was it Jangle Science Lad? I know he said he's cool with it. We've sewn out some stuff to a couple other people. There's also a writer, I think Gabriel said for the Medium. I'll get you better names later. But basically what I want to do is bring up a conversation between enough content creators about cancel culture, purity culture, the idea of harassment. How do we deal with that? How do we stop it in our communities? And I want to put forth an idea. This was your idea. So Zena is like Nick Fury in the fact that, well, they still have both eyes, but what they wanted to do was essentially create the equivalency of content creator Avengers. The idea that like there's a number of content creators who sort of make a wall around this stuff and don't allow it.
Well, a unified front, right? Of this is the stuff that this is how we want to handle these things. This is how we want to deal with the stuff or encourage. You know, what kind of behavior do we want to encourage, right? Because we've been noting a very great level of toxicity and misogyny with this stuff, and watching a lot of women get attacked through Twitter mobs is awful, and we would like to do something.
Oh, that's how else is involved. Cops Hate Mo was interested, and Merrick. I fucking love Merrick.
So the potential of, you know, figuring out some documents, some kind of like pledge of like, hey, this is the kind of, you know, values and way to kind of figure out handling this stuff. Because at this point, no, this is a big thing, and this really is hurting a lot of people very, very hard. Like,
yeah.
If that's something you'd be interested in, like maybe sometime early August, I'm trying to get a hold of other bigger content creators. I would love to get. I mean, honestly, the two I would fucking fangirl for as hard as humanly fucking possible. Let me just make it very clear to people what I mean when I say fangirl.
Honestly,
I'll post it later. It's the same. It's the same fucking GIF I use every time. But basically, if I could somehow get a hold of Contra, and if I could somehow get a hold of Vosh, because I feel like they have things to say here. Lindsay Ellis, I just don't think is going to return my emails. She doesn't really interact with streamers. I can respect that. We're dirty, I guess. But like,
I feel like at this point we might be almost like planning a con.
I mean, I shower. Speak for yourself.
It's, you know, it's just the hatred of streamers. It's like, oh, you're not doing prepared content. It's like, yeah, but we're on stage and trying not to say something so stupid that we end up imploding. But yeah, I would like you to be a part of that if you're interested. I think your voice would be really helpful. I think both because you are a younger trans person, but you're also a newer content creator, and you're just like me wading into this shit. I have the benefit of having like a full career and having like age on my side. You don't even got that. And so like, that's not to say that I think that's not it's not possible to do that or wade into things, but I think your view would be really, really unique and helpful.
Yeah, no, I would absolutely love to be on any sort of panel with regards to that. I think it's honestly important to talk about, not just in terms of broadly what's out there, but also solutions. I see that a lot. There's a lot of people saying that this is the problem, and then we don't know where to go from there. We've identified the issue. How can we fix it? And I think that's really important. I would also like to say that to everyone in chat who's talking about the spell to summon Destiny, it's not saying Destiny 3 times. You have to say the N-word into a mirror 3 times, and then he'll appear and try to debate you about it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that was the best. That's a perfect ender. God, hypers in chat for Jason coming on here today for a birthday treat. This was really cool. We'll have to do this again soon. Motherfuckers, do hypers in chat and like tell people. Hanging Wednesday, thank you so much for being here. I was singing your praises a few minutes ago. I guess tell people where they can find you.
You can find me on YouTube. Just add JaysonHere. That's JAYSON, and it's spelled that way because JAY makes the sound J. My mom's first name starts with the letter J, and so it's literally just J and then son smashed together. So that's how I picked my name.
It's the typical trans boy overthinking your name.
Listen, I had to think. There was a. I'm not giving you my social security number because I honestly need to memorize that still. But
so don't do that.
It's okay.
Yeah, I think that's about it. And thank you so much for having me on.
Of course, this was fucking amazing.
And finally, happy birthday, obviously.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right.
Well, we will see you next time, and please know you can come on at any point, okay?
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
It was lovely talking.
Talk to you later. Bye.
Yeah.
I hope you enjoyed the video, and thank you for watching. Please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Also consider donating to the channel. You can donate at streamlabs.com/transgirltherapist/tip, or at patreon.com and become a patron. Patreon.com/transgirltherapist.